Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reading an article from AP News and providing some commentary on it and how some small towns in America are disbanding their police force. And so this is in Goodhue, Minnesota. It's important to understand that law and order within the United States is breaking down either because of financial shortages, they can't afford them, or because people are losing trust in their law enforcement agencies. And so things like the disbanding of the United States, civil war, civil unrest in general, all of those things are becoming more and more possible within the United States because of these. And so let's continue reading on. So as Goodhue Police Chief Josh Smith struggled this summer to fill vacancies in his small department, he warned the town city council that unless pay and benefits improved, finding new officers would never happen. When nothing changed, Smith quit. So did his few remaining leading officers, leading the Minnesota town of 1,300 residents to shutter its police force in late August. America is in the midst of a police officer shortage that many in law enforcement blame on the twofold morale hit of 2020. The coronavirus pandemic and the criticism of police officers that boiled over with the murder of George Floyd by a police officer. Okay, so police officers are not there to help you in the United States. They are there to implement the will of the oligarchs, and we've seen that time and time again within the United States, where there is a separate set of rules, a lesser set of rules for the people in power versus the average person. Things like a speeding ticket is a flat amount, which hurts the poor far more than hurts the extremely rich. We see things like the Jeffrey Epstein case, where the client list was never found out. And so these rich people can get away with very, very heinous acts, whereas other people are held accountable for their actions if they are not a part of the financial economic elites. And in terms of the coronavirus pandemic, we see that law enforcement took a role of suppressing people, of stopping them from going to family members' funerals, from stopping them from going to the beach, from going on hikes, really ridiculous things where police officers really showed that no matter what the order was, they would take those orders and oppress the average person. And because of things like that, it became a concern, a trust deficit, where people were not willing to trust police officers anymore because of incidences like this. So the article goes on, from Minnesota to Maine, Ohio to Texas, small towns unable to fill jobs are eliminating their police departments and turning over police work to their county sheriff, a neighboring town, or state police. And I don't know how much I think I kind of agree with this to a large extent, because right now, a lot of police officers are just there to give people speeding tickets, even if they're like going a few miles over the speed limit. Really ridiculous. There was one time where like I remember getting pulled over. I think I was going like 55 and a 45, but the 55 sign was like, it was like within, I want to say like 10 yards. It was really close by. Like I saw the sign right in front of me. So I was going, I sped up to 55, like a few yards in advance, and I got a ticket because of that. The other time I got a ticket was, I believe I stopped at the white line, and the police officer said, no, you're supposed to stop at the stop sign. I said, no, you're supposed to stop at the white line if it's further back. And I actually brought that one to the court. It was at my college, and the judge actually opened up the laws right there and said, actually, Joe's right. The police officer was wrong. You're supposed to stop at the white line, not at the stop sign. And despite saying I'm right, I still got fined there. That was actually the moment when I realized that the law enforcement system was completely against the average person, because the officer showed that I was correct, that you are supposed to stop at the white sign. I literally followed the law. They showed that directly, that the officer was wrong, and I still got fined. I still got points deducted on my license for that. So that, I will never forget Officer Arredondo at Clemson, South Carolina, because of that. So I'm definitely putting him on blast, because he did not follow the law. I got punished for it. This was even shown in court that I I stopped at the white line. Anyways, I'm still bitter about that, by the way. But anyways, that is, law enforcement is there to create a need for law enforcement. I've seen in the Philippines that people don't get ticketed for speeding and things are pretty much fine on the roads. I mean, it's just as safe as roads in America. So I've come to recognize that to a large extent, the way America does policing is really just there to collect money from very poor people, typically, who can't afford to fight things in court, who do not have the influence to get things waived. Actually, I forgot. So speaking of Officer Arredondo at Clemson, South Carolina, I do remember there were a ton of other people who had the same problem where he just very clearly did not know the law, and all of us got tickets ran out for that. And there was one person, though, who apparently her father was an upper administrator at Clemson, and he came walking in with her and said, listen, what is this ticket about? She apparently, I think she forgot her ID or something it was. And as soon as the administrator named himself as an upper administrator at the university, Officer Arredondo just waved that person, said, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. No, I rescind that ticket. You don't have to worry about it, et cetera, et cetera. So you could clearly see this was an excellent, I mean, one, I'm just super bitter about this ticket I got unfairly, but two, you could clearly see that there were different standards depending on if the person has someone in power that can speak for them versus poor people who, even if they are following the law and even if the police officer knows that they were wrong, they still get punished because that is how law enforcement works in America. So financial, nepotistic reasons, corruption reasons, people are just not believing in law enforcement anymore in the United States. And we see the trend of getting rid of various police offices within the United States. It's not new. At least 521 U.S. towns and cities with populations of 1,000 to 200,000 disbanded policing between 1972 and 2017, according to a peer-reviewed 2022 paper by Rice University professor of economics, Richard T. Boylan. In the past 2 years, at least 12 small towns have dissolved their police departments. Goodhue County is now under contract for law enforcement duties in the town of Goodhue, even as Sheriff Marty Kelly tries to fill 4 vacancies in his own department. He said he has around 10 applications for those jobs. By comparison, one open position in 2019 drew 35 applicants, he said. Kelly knows that to get full staffing, he'll have to hire new deputies away from other towns or counties, creating vacancies in other places that will struggle to fill them. It's scary. We are robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we are not alone. At the heart of the problem is the exodus from law enforcement. Yeah, pretty much at this point, law enforcement is not about serving your community. It's about if you were a bully and you want to continue to be a bully past high school, or if you were bullied and want to become a bully, law enforcement offers you a way of doing that. And so it's a very corrupt organization in America, at least. I think in other parts of the world, law enforcement tends to work a little bit better. But in America, there is really no reason to go into law enforcement if you are a decent human being. Officer resignations were up 47% last year compared to 2019. Okay, so that's all according to a survey. Nearly 200 police agencies are part of that survey, et cetera, et cetera. Young people are increasingly unwilling to go through the months of training necessary to become a police officer. Oh, that's another thing, which is that in the United States, you don't need an entire bachelor's degree to become a police officer, whereas in other countries, you do need a bachelor. Sometimes you need a master's degree to become a police officer. And so you don't really need to be particularly well trained to be a police officer, which, given the incidences I've faced, it seems very clear that the lack of training and the fact that they aren't held accountable for their lack of training can really punish the average citizen. Fewer people are applying to be police officers, and more officers are retiring or resigning at a tremendous rate. There's a shortage of police officers across the country. Agencies of all sizes are struggling to fill open positions. Okay, we can skip some of this. Generally, crime rates were unchanged in towns that dropped their departments, the Rice University study found. Okay, leaders of several towns said they've been happy with the change. Okay, so getting rid of local police departments did not change crime rates within those countries. So think about that for a second. These police forces really were just there to harass people and take money in order to create a reason for their job to exist. And we see that quite a bit with kind of quotas for giving out tickets in the United States, and they say that's not happening, but it absolutely is happening, that people get really loose with giving out tickets, and it's to bring money into their police department. You really can't tell much of a difference. The sheriff's department is very responsive. I like it. I was always one who was very hesitant to go this direction, but I feel it's working for us. So if you have a strong community and you have access to firearms yourself, having a law enforcement there that really is just meant to implement the rules of the oligarchs is not particularly helpful. So I see it as a positive. A decade ago, I probably wouldn't have seen it as a positive, but at this point, just law enforcement is so corrupt. It's so morally repugnant. I don't see any reason to have it in most of the United States at this point. Okay, so other towns are getting rid of their police force. They don't have any concerns about it so far. City council had boosted pay by 5% for police officers in order to retain them. Gave a raise. It wasn't enough to keep them. Yeah, I can't imagine why. I mean, why would you, if you're a good person, why would you want to be a police officer in America right now? Because it's just not, it doesn't look good. You'd have to cover for people who are corrupt, who are bullies. It's not a good look. 2 weeks later, Smith gave notice of his resignation. Within days, the remaining full-time officers and 5 part-time employees also called it quits. The town agreed to pay the county about $44,000 for law enforcement services. Okay, skip. People can kind of watch out for each other a little bit. We pretty much know our neighbors. So if you have a close-knit community, having a law enforcement agency office within your town really doesn't matter overly much. Goebbels fears the loss of the police department is another challenge for Goodhue. In towns like it across the nation, as you lose your schools, you lose your business, and you lose your police force, how much longer can the town actually be viable as a town? We're seeing that a lot, where a lot of parts of America are just not viable anymore. So policing in small towns is going down. Job opportunities in small towns are going down. The school offerings are going down, so people have to bus their children elsewhere if they're even having children, and it's becoming increasingly unaffordable to have children. There's a nationwide police shortage because really at this point, why would you ever want to become a police officer in America? The ones that are in office are very corrupt, and you don't want to have to support them. You don't want to have to be a part of that corrupt culture. Things like county sheriffs can potentially take over the role, and there's some evidence showing that that's actually been successful. There are economic and demographic reasons for this. There's just a decline of America in a lot of parts of America where they can't afford a police force. Their population is declining because people are moving to cities, people are just not having children, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to consider the social community and cohesion aspects, in that some areas just simply don't need a police force if they have a lot of guns in their homes and if they have a close-knit community. I've heard a lot of people in America, I have a lot of friends who are preppers, and so for them, a police force really wouldn't be necessary because they have a few friends on speed dial who can bring over their rifles, their hunting rifles and stuff like that, and take care of any problems that are necessary. So it just seems to be a matter of getting rid of oppressive tyrants and their enforcement arm, which you can really, in the United States, to put it bluntly, I'd consider law enforcement to be mostly the militant arm of the oligarchs. And so it's a trade-off getting rid of your police force, and it might be scary at first, but for a lot of towns, they have to do it for various reasons, typically financial reasons, or people just don't want to join the police force, et cetera, et cetera. And most accounts show that it actually does work out. So that's what I'll leave you with. If you found this to be informative, if you're as salty about me getting pulled over at the stop sign, I completely understand. I'm super salty about it. But yeah, that's how things go. This is the police force. If you have any other stories of police doing things corruptly, not following the law themselves, being incompetent, et cetera, please let me know in the comment section below what you think of that, and also disbanding police forces within small towns, what you think some of the problems might be, et cetera, et cetera. So if you found this video to be helpful and informative, please give us a thumbs up. It helps us in the algorithm. Please subscribe to our channel on both YouTube and Rumble. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.